everyone, and welcome to Jess and the Guest. Today, my guest is Chief Meteorologist for Good Morning America, New York Times bestselling author, Dancing with the Stars contestant, and a million other things, Ginger Z. We talk about her decision to check into a mental institution a week before starting her job at GMA. We talk Dancing with the Stars, how she travels almost every 3 days, horrible travel stories, the craziest place she's been recognized, which is one of my favorite stories. She's incredible. I've learned so much from her. I really hope you like this episode. No, wait, you were just in Utah, right?
It's always it's funny because my husband, we landed on Saturday
Yeah.
from our vacation with kids, which is kind of like exhausting anyway.
Yeah.
It was wonderful, but and he's like, man, I need some days at home. And I'm like, yeah, I could use that too. We had planned to do Utah late this week.
Yeah.
But then I got a note Saturday, right when I landed, they were like, hey, we're thinking about having you go out at the beginning of the week for the heat. And I was like, okay, I just landed. So Sunday I turned around, we flew to Utah, did the heat, and then we got the Lake Powell story, which is the one we wanted to tell but we drove the state of Utah down and back in like 24 hours and did a huge live thing. It was so cool. It was crazy. One of those.
God.
But I told my husband, I'm like, this is the beauty, is I think I have endurance for this type of thing now.
One thing I loved about your book is how open and vulnerable you are. Did you ever struggle with that? And I know from a comedy perspective, I always sometimes struggle with, do I want people to know this about me? Do I want them to hear this?
I'm glad that comedy is brought into this, because I think that's a big part of healing. I mean, if it's not funny later, even when it's really bad, if you can't find some humor in most things, I think then you aren't healed. And so vulnerability allows that. And I think being vulnerable lends itself to self-deprecation, and that's what a lot of my book was, right? And so there's a reason I'm a total disaster, and why the title was the easiest thing in the world to write, because it is natural disaster. I cover them. I am one. I was like, that's me. And turns out after I wrote that book, I'm not alone. Apparently there are many of us out there.
I mean, I'm definitely one. Everyone I know is one.
Yeah. So the vulnerability piece, though, the other part is, it's one of the most healing things you can do. So selfishly, it's like a feedback loop. Always, you be vulnerable, you're a little afraid to do that, and then it works and it connects you to people, and then you feel better, and then it comes back and you're like, you know what? I'll be vulnerable again. Oh my gosh, it worked again. And so I think it's just starting. And then once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah. What was your writing process like for the book?
I think the writing process, I'm not a writer. That's what I would have said my whole life. And I think that's always an important lesson that I've learned from this experience is in sixth grade, I switched schools. So my first, trimester or whatever of seventh grade, I went and wrote a story for my English class, and the English teacher gave me a B. And I was like, a perfectionist. I was like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I went up to her. I was like, what can I do to make this better? And she said, well, maybe writing isn't your thing. And I was like, well, that's weird, because I love writing. I had been writing short stories my whole, middle school career at that point. She didn't know me. But I took it very hard, and I allowed that label, even though I gave it to myself. She didn't say, you're not a writer. Yeah. I just put it in my head, and science and math were my thing. And I loved meteorology. So I just kind of went like this and forgot that we can be complex humans who can do a lot of things. I held on to that label, which is a whole chapter in my new book, of not a writer, until I was pregnant with my child, who's now 5. And when I was pregnant, I was looking for baby books about weather. And I was like, there really aren't a lot of good ones. They're either totally inaccurate, or they're silly, or like, I know I could do this. I can handle a baby book. And even though I'm not a writer. And I went to the publishers, and I started pitching this idea. And the one, Wendy, Lefkonch, who's been my angel of publishing, she said, I love the idea. It's not a baby book. It's a chapter book. So why don't you write that, and we will, see what it looks like. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not a writer. And so she's like, why don't you go try? So I went and tried. I wrote a couple of chapters, came back, and she was like, it's great. Let's write a trilogy. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Then I'm telling her about my experiences, and all of a sudden I'm being vulnerable, expressing, and when I was at Katrina, I was also engaged to this guy who I ended up leaving 3 weeks before our wedding. She's like, what? And that turns into this next story. Suddenly, a woman who went in and is not a writer, came out supposed to write a baby book about weather, and I wrote a memoir about depression and suicide. Like, what just happened? And then it went on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
This non-author, this non-writer is an author of 5 books and now soon to be 6. And I think that's a great lesson to take with us, that those labels definitely stop us, you know. And I never want someone to have an idol moment where they're like, yeah, honey, you're really good at singing. And then they show up and they're like, not good at all. I'm not saying we should all encourage everyone to do everything.
Yeah.
However, if you enjoy something, to be able to imagine what I could have done writing for that 25 years I took off.
Yep. Yeah. No, I wish I learned that earlier too. I completely agree with you.
So my process, that was the longest answer ever to get
No,
to. My process is just, thankfully I had started journaling. My friend Brad, who's chapter 7, as he refers to himself as in my book.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, when I got this job, he said, you need to have a journal, and just so you don't forget, because your memory is awful, and he knows that about me. And he was right, because I was able to go back there, fill in the context, and then in retrospect, look and see what those events meant to me and what they meant to my life. And that's how I'd say the process began.
Oh, your book is so funny too. Do you have a secret comedy background?
I think my father is pretty funny. So I think I grew up with a lot of sarcasm. So I definitely get and self-deprecation from him. I would say I studied meteorology. I didn't study any television or communication. So when I got in my first job, I was like, I should probably hone that skill of being on camera, because that was not natural to me. I started taking voice lessons, acting lessons, and then when I got to Chicago, I did improv at Second City.
What? Oh.
Yeah, and so I really had a growing experience with comedy. And then my husband, who is, and he hates when I say this, is essentially a comedian.
I know, yeah.
He doesn't do stand-up, but that's what he does. And he hates when I say that, but he will tell you that I am the funny one in the relationship. And I'm like, I don't think that's true, but I think at home, and because I'm, on Gmail, you get 30 seconds, you don't get to know me, I don't have an opportunity. That book allowed that to showcase the funny.
He would be a great comedian.
Be so good, but he never wants to do it for some reason. He's just like not adamantly against stand-up. So
I loved in your book how you talked about awful style and hair, because I've been there. This is me trying way too hard right now.
You're doing an outstanding job and you look great for it. But that's the thing, no matter what, in decades and people, it doesn't matter if you're in television or not, you're going to look back at pictures and be like, oh my, we are a time capsule of what was happening at the time. I have this one picture of myself. I wish I could have included photos in the book, because I was in, I think it was 6th grade, 5th grade or something. And I have like the blossom hat, if you remember that one. And then I have like lace socks, a pillowy, like fluffy pirate shirt, one of those long, like bolo type necklaces. I was taking every fashion risk that there was on the planet and putting it out there. So I love looking back, but I think when you're in broadcasting, there's also this weird image that you expect that you're supposed to look like. So you're like, you're 23 and you're trying to look like a 50-year-old anchor. And that's what I was doing the whole time.
Nope. Everyone's like, are you lost? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. It's fine. All good. You're always so confident being on TV too.
I went to school for storm chasing. I didn't go to school for broadcast meteorology at all. And once I did an internship is when I started to say, well, maybe communicating science would be a good idea, but I still didn't study it. So it was really just like trial by fire and me figuring out how to look at a camera and not look like I was totally, not supposed to be there. I think, James Spann, who is my mentor, and he saw it in me, he would say, it helps when other people can see something that you don't yet see, and I was grateful that I had him and then a couple other people along the way that saw that in me. And then once it took off, the confidence, it's always challenged. We're all vulnerable, insecure messes, but I think that I started to realize no matter what my abilities on television were, my passion for what I know and my science came through every time. And that excitement and life that I think comes like straight through your eyes. That's what got me through all of the tougher times. Yeah. And then it started transitioning. Like if you would have told me when I was 19, hiding from cameras, because that's what I was doing on the first storm chases, that I was going to be on Dancing with the Stars, I would have laughed in your face.
How was Dancing with the Stars? Because it's such a tough show, both mentally and physically.
Oh my gosh. The
Yeah.
physical first, for
Yeah.
sure. But the mental, it was, and post having a baby, I was just in a really weird place in
Oh,
life.
no.
And I think, but that's why that show works. They do
Yeah.
something that is so pure of a human experiment. It's
Yeah.
taking somebody who's pretty expert in what they do,
Yeah.
breaking them down to the very base of who they are into something they've never done before, and then watching them grow back up. And so it's like that formula works every time
Yeah.
because you are seeing this person, and people handle it differently. So it is unique in each story.
Yeah.
But I loved, like, Kim Fields is still a good friend today. She was
Oh,
on that season with me, and we talk about it all the time because it was, even it's 5 years past, you learn about yourself better. It is the most intense, 15 weeks of therapy
yeah.
that you'll
Yeah.
ever go through. And then on top of it, you're getting in sick shape because you are spinning more than you ever should in life. So
Yeah.
like, I can do anything on camera, really live. Like, I
Yeah.
bring it on. Totally different when you're moving your body and you aren't able to speak and you can really only use your face. That was a weird, and so that's why Val always had this. He's like, stop doing the puppy dog. And I'd be like,
That's what I do too. I'm like, what do you do?
like, my natural reaction, even when like a workout's hard, is to be like,
Yeah.
and that's what it ends up looking like. I had to learn to control my face.
Yeah. How do you do mornings? Because right now I'm dying, like truly dying inside. How do you do it?
I mean, I feel sick almost always. I think it's not healthy. There's never, people are always like, oh, you must get used to it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on year 20 and I can't tell you that I have. I could not say that it is normal. And this is the real telling factor. When I had my second baby,
Yeah.
I had my maternity leave and I had taken, I think it was 8 or 9 weeks in. And most new parents are like, oh, exhausted. And I go to this book thing for Dr. Bo, one of my colleagues, and I see my boss, and she comes up to me and she's like, wow, you look so great. You look so rested. I'm like, says nobody to someone unless what they normally do is so much harder than having a baby.
Yeah.
So it really is challenging. Even like I said, I slept 4 hours for the first 72 hours of this week. And it just, you get endurance. I
Yeah.
don't think it ever feels good. I would say that. So like, you get used to it, and then and there is some element of catching up. But I try, especially the pandemic really showed me what
Yeah.
health could look like. It's
Yeah.
really nice.
Was it a big change? I mean, was it a huge change going from traveling nonstop to the pandemic hitting and then you're home?
I was traveling every 3 days. I was, between speeches, GMA, my other show on Saturdays that I do. I am always on a plane, always.
Yeah.
And so to have me grounded, it was for 3 months, really, the first 3 months. And then wildfire started and things that required
Yeah.
me traveling started back up again. But 3 months, I realized, is the longest I've ever been one place in 12 or 13 years.
Oh my God.
Because
Yeah.
that's how this job has gone for me, which has
Yeah.
brought me the most unbelievable experiences of life, and I could never complain. But it was definitely a kind of like constant spiral that there are times on the bottom of the spiral where you're like, whoa, 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 I don't think I can make it, and then it both boosts you up. And so
Yeah.
it was good for me to have a bit of a flat line for a little bit.
From traveling so much, you must have the craziest stories.
I would have slept more than 4 hours if it weren't for some crazy people on my flight back to Salt Lake, I'll tell you that. But I think most special as far as plane debacle is I was traveling with my weather team. I try to take my weather team on some sort of outing once a year so that we have like a team bonding thing.
Oh,
We're
nice.
actually going in a couple of weeks. But we were going to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And I had booked all the tickets. And it's in the middle of spring, so there's, the chance always of spring snow. We had to go through Atlanta to get to Denver just because of how the timing worked out with what all of us could do.
Yeah.
Not how I would usually do it, but because of whatever. So there's a snowstorm, of course there is, when we're leaving, the whole weather team. And we were at Newark, I think, and we were, we got out, but we got out late, and it was going to be so tight. And then we landed, we knew we weren't going to make our connection to Denver.
Yeah.
Trying to rebook 5 people is where it's hilarious now. It was so painful. Myself and Max, who's the worst traveler ever, a meteorologist I work with, he's like my brother at work. Him and I stayed in Atlanta. Samantha flew through Las Vegas to Denver. Mel, who's the worst flyer, she never flies, and she was so anxious We tried to get her on a direct to Denver.
Yeah.
She was the only ticket we could get for that. Somebody had a heart attack on her plane. They had to land in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh my
We
God.
were all spread across the country trying to get to Steamboat Springs.
Oh my God.
It's hilarious now when we tell the story. And then Max is the type, like, he needs 3 square meals, hot, sit down. You can't just have some nuts and get on with yourself. So he wouldn't even let me leave the airport without having a burger. I'm like, I don't want to eat here. Why are we eating at the airport when we're going to be here all night? So there's just so many fun. I call them fun now. It was not fun in the moment.
That's amazing. Yeah. But yeah, that also sounds like my nightmare too at the time. Like I can't even count how many incredible experiences and traveling you've done with GMA, but do you have a favorite travel that you've done with them?
I always think Nepal was one of my favorites. I did this para-hawking. So it's paragliding, but you let a vulture eat out of your hand as you're flying with the bird in the Himalayan mountains. Like it's otherworldly. You're watching around yourself and just, it's so surreal. And often how my trips go is I kind of drop in and then leave, and I'm there for, I go around the world and I'm there for 2 days tops. And so it's a strange, we did around the world. We did every Disney park in 7 days. We did Iceland. I was on the glacier when drones were brand new. We flew a brand new drone. Nobody had ever seen video like this into a fissure of a volcano on a glacier in Iceland. That was a good one. Vietnam, I was in the largest cave in the world. We were broadcasting live from there.
I remember watching that.
Yeah. And that one sticks out. Palau. I mean, even recently we did Victoria Falls in Africa and did a climate change story there. And Iguazu Falls, I could keep going. And that's the beauty, is that I have these opportunities to be in these places and experience them. And I don't know where you go from here, but at the same time, exploring the world and bringing people the environmental crises or whatever it is, that's all I want is to keep doing that.
You talk so much about mental health in the book, which I loved. And I think we're making some progress, but I wish more people talked about it. Why was it so important for you to talk about?
I mean, it's my life, it's like having any sort of medical something that you have and other people have too, and that it only helps to have community around that. So the impetus of doing the book that way and starting with, hey, I checked myself into a hospital, was just like you said, we're making progress. People are able to say now pretty regularly, I have depression or I suffer with anxiety. That comes out of people's mouths much easier than it did even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think where the stigma lies is, okay, once you say that, if you say to someone, oh, I go to therapy, they might be like, that's getting better too. If you say, I'll take it back. If you say for drug and alcohol rehabilitation, oh, so-and-so had to go for drug rehab, we all say, oh, good for them.
Yeah.
When I say I went to the psych ward at Columbia, people are like, whoa.
Yeah.
Eyebrows raised. Everybody's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. I wanted to stop that. I wanted them to say, well, good for her, because
exactly.
It's like saying I broke my leg, so I went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Good for her. Well, not even good for her. Obviously you would. That's what we need to get it to. So it's not just good for her. It should just be just like drugs and alcohol should take it one step further and say, yeah, obviously they did, because that's how you get better, is get real help. And so that was what I really wanted, and why my book starts with that line, like, hey, I checked myself into a mental hospital, stayed a week, because once I did that, it was the first time in my mental health journey, which had not been pretty, that I was being transparent. And the vulnerability was me saying, people aren't going to like me, or they're going to judge me, or they're going to see something about this. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, I guess I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't, because I know that the people who do get this and who need this are going to see it. And I'm ready to take on whatever else. And of course, that's been minimal compared to the gravity of this book. I didn't realize. And I'll get emails still. I'll get them right now. I'll get them today. Somebody will say, you saved my life. Like that deep, and I couldn't believe that that's what the book did. And it keeps doing. And I'm so really, really, really grateful for that.
There were so many great mental health tips too. I couldn't get over the fence that you talked about in it. I love that. I want to start doing that with people.
Oh, and that was, that's 5 years ago that when I was writing that, 6 years. I think even since then, I have exposed more that I needed to work on. This next book that I wrote really gets back to, like, it's not like I wrote a book on mental health and here I am the expert. Like, it
Yeah.
is just like physical health. You can't just go to a personal trainer for a year, get in sick shape, and then walk around with your abs. It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. Like, because you can't just stop going to the gym and stop working on it.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you have to work harder, and some of it's maintenance, and then other times you run into new things, but you learn those tools. And this next book, I included more tools because that's what people said. They always say the fence. They were like, that was such an analogy.
I know. Yeah.
And what I realized after writing that book, the non-writer, I realized what I do for a living is communicate science.
Yeah.
I communicate atmospheric science, but I think what I got good at without knowing was communicating any science. So
Yeah.
taking the therapy that I have the privilege of having the financial ability, the family support to go and get this help. Now I can share little pieces of that through a book. And
Yeah.
if I can do it by some self-deprecating humor, great.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited for your next book. So.
And
Your second.
I think it might really blow your mind because I didn't even realize all these things that I needed to work on. And
Yeah.
it's still funny. There's still great humor in it, but it's a lot darker. And I think I was more emboldened now to say, yeah, let me let you in a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I love that you spoke about dating too, because my last date was with a wannabe magician, like not even a real magician, a wannabe magician in LA. So I related to it too much. I need help. This is my low point.
Is that not an entire stand-up routine right there? I dated a wannabe magician.
I know. I will make it that. It's like, is this too sad?
You have to. There's so many ways you can go with that.
Yeah. So I related a lot to it. Do you, I felt like you have really good advice too. Do you have any good dating advice? Any like very quick one?
Yeah, I wish if I could go back.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not, because then I probably wouldn't have met my husband. So let's not say that. But
Yeah.
I wish if I could have gone back into the dating part, I wish I could have told myself that every day is fresh, and so in those moments when I really thought it's never going to happen, I was 31, 32, and I'm getting off on another plane and I'm watching a family come on and I start bawling. I'm like, it's never going to happen. I can't have it all, whatever. I even saw a Facebook message recently that I had written. And you can tell in your Facebook memories how salty you were, like,
Oh yeah.
And this was a year where obviously all my friends were having babies and everybody was married. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
And so in the message, I'm like, I'll probably, here I am doing laundry again, blah, 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 by myself.
Yeah.
Like, and I looked at the date and 8 days later, I met my husband.
Oh.
So I like telling people that, like, when you're in those points, just like I always say about mental health, it's like, you have to go through that to get to the sunshine. You have to go through it, because just like you can get hit by a bus tomorrow, you could also meet the man of your dreams tomorrow. Like, that sounds a little more like brash, but it's true. And knowing that it's not about having this endless hope or romanticism. It's like, no. Every pot has its top. Everybody's going to have that somewhere. And some of them turn out and some of them are there for a reason, some for a season and for a lifetime. And, you can only hope.
I always love when your kids are on camera too. They're so cute. Do any of them want to go into TV too?
Adrian will do anything you say. He's like the perfect stage kid. So, and yes, he already shows interest in, like, he watched his teacher started singing Sound of Music, and he loves to sing. And yesterday he was standing on a stoop that we have in our front yard that's like to the front door, and he was treating it like a stage, and he was doing this like big thing. And no one's ever taught him that. No one's ever showed him. He just kind of naturally does it. And if I put a camera on him, he'd do it bigger, like he's his dad. And then I'd say that Miles, I think he loves entertaining people in a social way. He does not like the camera. And what he doesn't like about the camera? It's because he knows that you want him to do it. Yeah. And he is such a whatever, he just likes to be the 180 of the world. So I wish I lived more like my younger son. I want to be him when I grow up. He is such a I don't care kid. Like, I don't care what you think, and it's not going to affect how I feel about myself or what I want. And he's had fences from the time he came out.
How do I do that? Yeah, I was like,
I know. I'm learning a lot from him. It's not, so I will, like, say that that's my husband. I mean, my
Yeah.
husband is the no guy and I'm the yes person all the time. And there's such a good balance. You know, there has to be somewhere between those two. So I hope we can teach the kids that.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, so now we have some very serious rapid fire questions. What is your favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, this is gonna sound terrible, but I just grew a bunch of kale and
Oh no.
I do
No,
love kale. I love it. I
no.
love it because you can turn it into everything, like the
Yeah.
chips and thing. And okay, that sounds
Yeah.
awful.
No, no.
So
When you're not, how do you like to spend your free time?
I love to run and not run for exercise, run for mental health, like to
Yeah.
just be away. And I love to run in new places. Running
Ooh.
to explore is one of my favorite pastimes.
Oh, that's awesome. What's your guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh my gosh. I followed the Teen Mom Girls, the OGs,
Yeah.
from day one,
Yeah.
and it is still one of the best casted shows in America.
Yeah.
It is so well put together. MTV, they should be given every award in the world for casting because every show they do is just like, it's so good.
Yeah.
And so I'd say that I haven't caught up on the last 2 seasons, but I'd say them and then oh, there's so many I loved for a long time. It's just after you have
Yeah.
kids, it starts to
You're
not
a little
happen for
busy,
you
you know.
anymore.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's because you're watching TV, but you're watching like what they want to watch, which is fine. But a
Yeah.
lot of times it's, you know, it's just not,
Yeah.
it's not your trashy TV. That's
I
not
know.
what you're watching. And I love my trashy TV. I miss it.
Yeah. Do you have any big pet peeves or anything like that?
Two things, dirty ears
Yeah.
and like long nails on a guy.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I know. Yeah.
Can't,
Yeah.
ew.
No.
Like,
Um,
and I don't like the guitar thing. I kind of get, and I can understand that's what you're doing. You have picks on your nails. I can't do it. I don't know what it is.
no, I completely agree. I like it's like something I look at and then I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I'm very hand oriented. I always check
Yeah.
people's hands and feet, both, you
Yeah.
know, and then ears. For some, my husband always says, "Stop looking at my ears."
What's the craziest place you've ever been recognized?
It's always when I look nothing like I look on camera. It's
Yeah.
always those ones that oh, this is a good one. It was in the middle of the pandemic. My brother had actually visited because we had both already had COVID. So we were like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so he came and we were walking the trail and I looked truly nothing like it. I'm with my 6'5" brother.
Yeah.
And this woman she shrieked and she was like,
I know.
and like, you know, you're just passing someone. It's really, we were jogging like, and she shrieked so much. We thought something was wrong. We turned around. She's like, "It's you. It's you." And it was her reaction that's more recent, but I've had some good ones. It's so fun. I love when people watch and I
Yeah.
love when we have something to talk about because then it lets me learn who they are and I get to
Yeah.
connect with them.
Oh my God, that would startle me so much.
I know. I was like, what happened?
I know.
Oh,
Dear God. Oh, it's
hi.
yeah.
Hello.
If you were to sing
Oh, wait.
dancer, but
Before I get to that one,
yeah.
I just remembered one of the other really,
Oh,
really, it's a reverse because the person knew who I was. But okay, so I was in Detroit at the auto show and I was just like meeting people. So they set up like this thing where people could come take photos and I could
Yeah.
sign things or whatever. Number one, I had a streaker in one of my videos that has made it on like every clip
Oh.
show. You know, I never knew who it was because this was back before social media. It was before they
Yeah.
could ever know that they were live on TV naked with a sombrero and tennis shoes and nothing else. And I was doing like a serious story and they came running by me and FCC it was bad
Yeah.
and funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I'm in line at this thing and the guy comes up, he's like, "Hi, I'm your streaker." And I'm like, "What? Wait, what? You're my streaker?" He brought his baby, his wife, and he was like all grown up and he had been a college student at the time. We had the best laugh about it. The next person in line was like, "Hi, I was your gynecologist."
Oh my God.
When you worked in Flint. I'm like, it is great to see you.
Oh my God.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh my God.
you waited in line?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
sorry,
the
what
best
was
story
your
I've heard.
most-
Yeah. Oh no, this doesn't compare now, but I was just gonna say, if you had any other career, what would you be?
Oh yeah. I loved bartending. That sounds so like, but I love entertaining that way. And I used to work at a country club where we threw weddings. And so maybe it's like the Jennifer Lopez wedding planner / I get to bartend still.
Yeah. I feel like you connect with people so well. Like that's I mean, to me, one of
It's
your,
where I learned how to do that.
yeah,
You know, I think I was a very shy kid, but when you're a bartender and you're at a wedding and everybody's drunk, and then you're like, it's kind of a nice place to practice doing whatever you want,
yeah,
being whoever you want. And most of the time, people are in a very good mood. So it's kind of an easy place to try different things and see what works on getting tips or do, like what connects to people. And I loved bartending for that, but I also just loved making people happy. Like they were having a blast dancing away. I got to watch all of that. The
yeah.
energy of a wedding every Friday and Saturday night was a very special way to grow up working,
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. You're incredible. I'm so inspired by you. I don't know how you do everything, but I'm impressed.
Well, I hope to see you in your stand-up someday.